Once upon a time, there lived a young couple named Joshua and Annabelle. They lived in a bustling city, surrounded by tall buildings and busy streets. Joshua was a hard-working engineer, and Annabelle was a dedicated teacher. They met in college and fell deeply in love, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. After graduation, they got married in a beautiful ceremony, attended by family and friends. They dreamed of starting a family and living a life full of joy and laughter. Years passed, and Joshua and Annabelle's love for each other only deepened. However, despite their best efforts, they were unable to have children. They consulted doctors and specialists, tried various treatments, but nothing seemed to work. This challenge began to weigh heavily on them, particularly on Annabelle, who yearned to be a mother. She often found herself staring longingly at children in the park, wondering if she would ever experience the joy of holding her own child. Joshua, always supportive and loving, tried to comfort Annabelle. "We have each other, and that's the most important thing," he would say. But he knew how much this meant to her, and it pained him to see her so heartbroken. They discussed their options and decided to consider surrogacy. It was a difficult decision, but they hoped it would bring them the family they desired. After months of research and discussions, they were ready to find a surrogate. However, finding the right person proved to be challenging. They wanted someone they could trust completely, someone who would care for their child as much as they would. As they pondered their next steps, Annabelle's mother, Margaret, visited them. Seeing her daughter's distress, she offered a solution that took them by surprise. "Annabelle, Joshua, I want to help you," Margaret said one evening. "I will be your surrogate." Annabelle was stunned. "Mother, are you sure? This is a huge sacrifice." Margaret smiled warmly. "I am sure. I want to see you happy, and if this is what it takes, I will do it." Joshua and Annabelle were deeply touched by her offer, and after careful consideration, they accepted her help. The process began, and Margaret underwent medical evaluations to ensure she was healthy enough to carry a child. The doctors were thorough, and after several tests, they confirmed that Margaret was fit for the task. The embryo transfer was successful, and soon Margaret was pregnant with Joshua and Annabelle's child. It was a joyous moment for the entire family, filled with hope and anticipation. However, as Margaret's pregnancy progressed, things began to change drastically. Margaret would often call Joshua to rub her stomach, saying it soothed the baby. At first, Annabelle thought this was normal and a natural part of the process. Joshua was always willing to help, and he spent a lot of time making sure Margaret was comfortable. But as the weeks went by, Margaret's demands for Joshua's attention became more frequent and intense. Annabelle began to feel uneasy. Margaret insisted Joshua be present at all her checkups, hold her hand during doctor visits, and even stay by her side late into the night. Annabelle watched as Joshua, trying to be supportive, complied with every request. Feeling troubled, Annabelle decided to confide in her father. One evening, she visited her parents' house and sat down with her father, Mr. Thompson. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "I'm worried about Mum. She's been demanding so much of Joshua's time and attention. I feel like something isn't right." Mr. Thompson listened carefully and then sighed deeply. "You see why I was never part of this from the beginning," Mr. Thompson said. "I know your mother can be very desperate at times. Her intentions might have been good, but she tends to overstep boundaries. After she delivers the baby, she should pack her belongings and go back to her father's house. This situation is becoming unhealthy." Annabelle nodded, understanding the gravity of her father's words. Determined to address the issue, Annabelle also talked to Joshua. She expressed her concerns and the conversation she had with her father. "Joshua, I feel like Mum is demanding too much of you. It's starting to affect us." Joshua looked at her with gentle eyes and replied, "Annabelle, I see nothing wrong in what I'm doing. I'm just trying to help and support her through this pregnancy." Annabelle felt a mix of frustration and sadness. She understood Joshua's perspective, but couldn't shake off her feelings of unease. The tension in their home grew as Margaret's pregnancy progressed. As weeks turned into months, The situation in the household grew increasingly strained. Joshua began to distance himself from Annabel. He refused to sleep in their bedroom, insisting that she move into the guest room. "I'm expecting my baby from my woman," he told her coldly. Unlike some people who are barren, Annabel was crushed by his harsh words. She would lock herself in the guest room and cry, feeling like a stranger in her own home. Annabel's father, Mr. Thompson, noticed her distress and visited her one evening. "Annabel," he said gently, "this is not how a marriage should be. You need to confront Joshua and stand up for yourself. You deserve to be treated with respect and love." Annabel nodded, wiping her tears, but felt uncertain and scared. She loved Joshua deeply and couldn't understand how things had gone so wrong. Determined to address the issue, Annabel gathered her courage and confronted Joshua once again. "Joshua, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "Why are you treating me this way? I am your wife, for crying out loud, and I deserve some respect. This situation with my mother has gone too far." Joshua looked at her with cold indifference. "You don't understand, Annabel. Margaret is carrying my child. She deserves all my attention and care. Unlike you, she is capable of giving me what I want." Annabel's heart shattered at his words. "Joshua, this isn't just about the baby. We are a family, and you are pushing me away. Can't you see how much this is hurting me?" Joshua remained unmoved. "You are overreacting, Annabel. Maybe if you were capable of having a child, things would be different. Now stop complaining and do your part." Annabel felt a surge of anger and sadness. She realized that Joshua was no longer the loving husband she once knew. His obsession with the baby had blinded him to everything else. Feeling lost and alone, Annabel found it increasingly difficult to hide her sadness at work. One day, her colleague Sarah noticed her distress and decided to reach out. During lunch, Sarah approached Annabel with concern in her eyes. "Annabel, you seem really down lately. Is everything okay?" Sarah asked gently. Annabel sighed, feeling overwhelmed. "It's Joshua," she confessed, her voice trembling. "Since my mum became our surrogate, he's changed. He's distant, cold, like he doesn't see me anymore. I feel so lost." Sarah listened attentively, her heart going out to her friend. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said sincerely. "You deserve better, Annabel. Maybe it's time to focus on yourself. Dress nicely, take care of yourself. You're a beautiful woman, and Joshua needs to see that." Annabel nodded, wiping away tears. "Thank you, Sarah. I need to find my strength again." Annabel began dressing more confidently. Margaret couldn't help but notice the change. One evening, as they passed each other in the hallway, Margaret decided to address Annabel about her appearance. "Annabel," Margaret said firmly, eyeing her up and down, "I see you've been dressing differently lately. But remember, Joshua's attention belongs to me." "Mother," Annabel began, trying to keep calm, "you should be ashamed of yourself. How can you fight your own daughter over a man? I'm so disappointed in you. Dad even said you shouldn't come back to his house." Margaret scoffed, brushing off Annabel's words. "Who cares about your poor old father? I have no reason to go back to him." When Joshua returned home, Margaret was visibly upset. She saw a chance to turn Joshua against Annabel. "Joshua," Margaret said, her voice shaking, "Annabel insulted me and even hit me." Joshua, already tense from the situation at home, reacted with anger. He turned to Annabel accusingly. "Is this true?" he demanded. Annabel was shocked and hurt. "No, Joshua, she's lying." But Joshua believed Margaret's story over Annabel's protests. "Pack your things and leave," he said coldly. Annabel, devastated and feeling betrayed, gathered her belongings silently, tears streaming down her face. As she walked out of their home, she couldn't understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Annabel went back to her father's house to heal. She missed Joshua, but needed time away from the hurt. Meanwhile, in Joshua's absence for a business trip, Margaret's behavior grew increasingly reckless. She would bring home young men, hosting late-night parties fueled by alcohol. The gateman, loyal and concerned for Joshua's well-being, couldn't keep silent any longer. When Joshua returned from his trip, the gateman informed him about Margaret's behavior. Joshua was furious and couldn't believe what he heard. That night, when Margaret came back home, Joshua was waiting for her. He was angry and hurt. So he asked her about what he had heard. "What's this about, Margaret?" Joshua asked loudly. "Why are you bringing strange men into our home and drinking so much?" Margaret was surprised by Joshua's anger. "So what if I am?" she said back, trying to defend herself. "I'm your mother-in-law, and I can do what I want. Besides, I'm old enough to be your mother." Joshua felt his heart break even more when he realized what Margaret had done. "Mother-in-law, my foot," he yelled sadly. "I can't believe I chased my wife out of our matrimonial home because of an old wicked woman like you. You should be ashamed of yourself, you old witch." Margaret didn't want to listen to Joshua. "I made you a real man, Joshua. You owe me respect." In the midst of their heated argument, overwhelmed by emotions, Joshua pushed Margaret in frustration. She stumbled and fell, hitting her abdomen on a nearby table edge. Margaret was rushed to the hospital due to the fall. The doctors delivered devastating news. Margaret had suffered a miscarriage as a result of the fall. When Margaret returned home from the hospital, Joshua was filled with a mix of anger and sadness. He couldn't bear to look at her after what had happened. "Leave," Joshua said firmly, his voice trembling with emotion. "I never want to see you in this house again." Margaret, feeling ashamed and rejected, knew she had no choice. She couldn't go back to her husband's house, so she left for her village, carrying the weight of her actions. Realizing the depth of his mistakes, Joshua swallowed his pride and went to Annabel's father's house to apologize. He knew he had hurt her deeply, and he hoped for a chance to make things right. Annabel listened to Joshua's apology with a heavy heart. She had loved him deeply, but the pain and betrayal were too much to bear. She had already started a new relationship with someone who treated her with kindness and respect. Despite Joshua's heartfelt apologies, Annabel had made her decision. She was moving on with her life and had already begun planning her wedding with her new partner. Joshua felt a deep sense of regret and loss. He knew he had lost the love of his life due to his own actions and the influence of Margaret. As Annabel prepared for her wedding with her new partner, she felt a sense of hope and renewal. Despite the hardships she had faced, she was ready to embrace a future filled with love and happiness. Joshua, although heartbroken, knew he needed to find closure. He wished Annabel happiness in her new life and vowed to learn from his mistakes. The story of Joshua, Annabel, and Margaret serves as a reminder of the complexities of relationships and the consequences of our actions. It teaches us that forgiveness and redemption are possible, but healing takes time and effort. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed this story and want to see more interesting ones, don't forget to like, share, and turn on your post notifications to get notified whenever we upload new videos. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.